swear, this was not intended to be this way. So, as you know, in October, I do my 31 horror reviews of Halloween. I take a break from what I typically review, and I just go through a lot of stuff that I normally wouldn't get to in a year. Pretty much horror themed, obviously, for October. Um, but what I didn't realize is I was coming to like the end of a lot of stuff I've been working on, like weird transitions with these IPs. So last review, we're getting up to Angel of Darkness, which is the final arc in those Tomb Raider, both the second library edition and that first Colossal collection. Um, Next review is all the Tale stories in the Rise of the Sith omnibus, ending that omnibus. With this, it's not. I'm not ending this Aliens Omnibus 1, although I'm pretty close to done. What I am doing is I'm reading the last Aliens comic before Alien 3. That's right. We're talking about Newt's Tale. Newt's Tale is a 2-issue mini that is Aliens from Newt's perspective, except for when it's not, because we needed padding. Issue 1 is The Last Stand at Hadley's Hope. What this book is three things. The first is it is the deleted scenes that James Cameron brought back in when he did his Aliens special edition that came out in 92. It's what he wanted to be the definitive version of Aliens, which adds in all the Hadley's Hope stuff with the colonists that he filmed. He adds the auto turret scene with the colonists. Also, it adds in the whole how long Ripley was actually in cryostasis, her daughter Amanda dying, which has now been retconned as a whole thing. But this was what he wanted people to think of Aliens as. And I'm going to give you my opinion on the special edition because I feel like I need to before I get into Newt's Tale. I don't like the special edition. I'm in the minority with that. The only thing I like that the special edition adds is that the auto turret scene. I think that's a very good tense scene. I get why it was cut for pacing purposes. Everything else it's front loaded with new material. I don't like any of the Hadley's Hope stuff. Not because the acting's bad. In fact, the acting's quite good, and I feel bad for those actors. It takes away from the shock when the Marines go into the hive and they realize how many aliens there are. It takes away from the suspense. And it just kind of ruins things going forward when it comes to... Because Aliens is some of James Cameron's best suspense stuff he has ever done as a director, and it is completely mitigated by the special edition. And then, like, the whole Amanda Ripley thing, I've never liked that. I know that is canon, and, you know, Alien Isolation's a solid game, fine novelization. But I just it wasn't necessary. Like, it wasn't necessary at all for Aliens to have that. We already get that Ripley's the surrogate mother for Newt. We didn't need the additional Ripley lost a daughter spelled out for us. You know, that's just whatever. We don't need to see the colony, like, before it's, like, thrashed by the xenomorphs. We don't need that. That's what Newt's Tale's here to do. If you want that, like with the Star Wars Expanded Universe, you can search that out. That's why you have expanded adventures like these. So it's one part that. It is one part The Last Stand of Hadley's Hope. So we get a little bit of it. And you gotta understand, like, this is one of these weird quasi-canon comics with the current Titan book stuff because Christopher Golden borrows heavily from the first issue of Newt's Tale for what he did with River of Pain. Now, there's a lot of retconning, like Damian Brackett and the other Marines that were there aren't are missing from this because that's just a bad thing to put into that story. It just takes away from the tension and just makes a tedious drama story, which is what River of Pain was. It was just tedious. Um, the one thing that Christopher Golden does keep in his novel is Newt and her brother Timmy and the other kid witnessing the chest burster come out of her father. That's pretty much the same in Newt's Tale as it is in River of Pain, and kind of how her family dies in The Last Stand is pretty close to how it came down in the novel. And we get a little bit of Newt wandering around, so until the Marines and Ripley show up. And then it plays out pretty much like Aliens does. And like, this is when the book really falls apart. So this is like midway through the first issue that this happens, and we get up until the Marines go into the hive and shit goes wrong. Then we cut to issue 2. And for all this, it's been Newt's point of view. Until Newt takes her nap back at the Hadley's Hope colony, and Ripley has a confrontation with Carter Burke, which comes off like a weird amalgamation of what Alan Dean Foster did in the novelization and what happens in the movie. And this is the one time the Newt's perspective thing is broken, because the third thing this Newt's Tale's trying to do is it's trying to be a movie adaptation of Aliens. Because there never was one. Out of the original 4 Alien films, Aliens is the only one that never got a comic book adaptation. I don't know why this was. I know Dark Horse wouldn't have done it because they didn't have the rights then. They bought the rights after Aliens was a hit in the box office. So there never was an Aliens movie adaptation comic. You'd think Marvel would have done it because Marvel did movie adaptations for everything back in the 80s. But they didn't. They didn't with this one, and I don't know what the deal was. So Newt's Tale becomes that, and then it goes back to Newt's perspective, and all the things go down, and then Newt gets lost in gets taken by the xenomorphs and cocooned, and it cuts from her like fainting from being grabbed by the xenomorph to Ripley rescuing her in the hive. We do get to see Carter Burke like cocooned up on the wall, and Ripley talks to him briefly. That's the only other thing this adds. Well, that and the last panel to make it tie into Alien 3, kind of. Are like the other 2 things that are added. And it is weird. It's just a really weird thing. I don't remember that from the novelization. I mean, obviously David Farland's story from Bug Hunt contradicts this, I'm pretty sure. From what I remember. But yeah, it's just a weird one. I don't like it. I don't like running into Burke again. It's unnecessary. What did I think of Newt's Tale? I don't think it's very good. It has very bad art. You can't tell who's who of the men, like, at all. You probably couldn't tell who was who of the women, but there aren't that many women in this story, so it doesn't matter. Newt kind of looks like Newt, and that's about all the artist does to make it make sense. Ripley has red hair for some reason that is beyond me. It's like the people that wrote Newt's Tale couldn't quite remember aliens, so they kind of guess at things. Dialogue is swapped between characters sometimes for no reason and takes away from things. Uh, It's just, it's a half-assed thing, which sucks because, like, it's stuff that I think fans were really curious about what The Last Stand of Hadley's Hope looked like. Or, hell, making it a tie into Alien 3 with the last panel, which is clearly an editorial choice. And they just drew. They drew on already established art and changed a word bubble. It, so that Alien 3 would make sense because that's the next comic after this is the Alien 3 adaptation. But it's weird. It's unfortunate that this is the final Aliens comic before we jump into Alien 3 and continuity starts getting thrown out the window. Because it's been honestly really nice going through most of this Aliens omnibus, and there's been a definitive canon up to this story, and then it's going to go away after this. But Newt's Tale is not great. Honestly, if you had to pick between this and River of Pain, I have to go with River of Pain. It's better written. This is shorter, obviously. You can read this in one sitting. It's only 2 comic book issues. But River of Pain, you're going to get more out of. Although you'll be bored. Because that becomes weird love triangle drama. And weird subordination drama between the Marines. Like, I don't know. It just, ugh. Ugh. It's like picking between a dried turd and a wet turd. Like, they're both turds. You know? What would I rank this? A 2.6 out of 5. Ugh. If you got the omnibus, might as well read it. You know, don't just seek out Newt's Tale. If you really had to get an Aliens comic book adaptation of the film, this is the best bet you have. Unless someone has made a fan made comic adaptation, which I don't know. But it's weird. I don't know. I didn't like this one. So, anyway, have a nice day.